Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my kitchen. I'm really excited for today's Cooking with Karla because we're making one of my favorite dish ever, paella. Today is a vegetarian paella. My best friend says that it's basically a glorified rice with vegetables. She's not wrong, but nonetheless, it's tasty and it's a great technique. It's a dish that comes from Spain. It's very traditional from Spain, and according to the region, they make it differently. For example, in Valencia, you could probably see different ingredients like snails, seafood, uh, and different vegetables and herbs and spices. And there's paella mixta or mixed paella, which includes seafood and chicken and maybe some sausage like chorizo. And there's also paella made just with seafood, paella de mariscos, which is delicious. And some paellas may have legumes and beans. Today I decided to make it without any legumes to keep the ingredients lower because usually paellas have a lot of ingredients. And you know me, I want to make recipes like this be a little bit more approachable. So you'll still see a lot of ingredients, but I'll show you that is doable, and we'll speak on some substitutions because one of the main ingredients for paella is saffron. It's come from a flower. They look like little hairs, red hairs, and that's what gives paella the amazing color. And you do it by adding the saffron to the broth. But saffron can be very pricey, very expensive. So I'm going to speak on a few options that you can use that are more affordable and easier to find. So with that, let's get started. All right, guys, so here are all the ingredients. As you can see, we have a nice mixture of frozen vegetables, jarred vegetables, and fresh vegetables. It looks like a lot, but again, I promise most of these you can find very easily. For vegetables, I'm gonna use green peppers to cook the pie, to add to the paella in the cooking process. And I'm gonna use red to cut them in strips for garnish. All you need is actually one large tomato. I had Roma tomato, so I'm using two. You can also use canned diced tomatoes. If you're using canned diced tomatoes, all you need is half a cup. We're using eggplant today. One eggplant, if you can get a smaller eggplant, better. Um, some fresh parsley, garlic. You guys know I love garlic, so I am gonna make my paella garlicky. But you can use as much or as little as you want. A medium-sized onion. We have 1.5 cups of medium grain rice. This one is a little bit yellow because it's parboiled, but if you can find any regular medium grain rice, you can also use arborio rice. This is the rice that is used for risotto. But remember, you have to remember, I'm going to explain this when I'm cooking the paella. Paella, while it's cooking, you do not stir, especially if you're using arborio rice, because as you know, when you use arborio rice, you'll be, creating it more creamy. And paella is not creamy. It's sort of soupy, but not creamy. Um, the traditional rice that is used for paella is called bomba rice. Uh, and that one you could get at specialty stores or online. BOMBA, bomba. It's fun to say. But it's very similar to medium grain rice. It's sort of a shorter grain. You cannot make paella with a longer grain because it won't absorb the stock as well. We also have some lemon for garnish, and we have jarred artichokes, and we have about 3/4 of a cup of frozen peas that I thawed. We have fresh thyme, and this is smoked paprika, sweet paprika. salt and pepper. And instead of the saffron, I'm gonna use achiote. I know achiote because my grandma used to use it to make a very traditional Puerto Rican dish called pasteles. I love them. Um, and and it's like sort of like you make a dough with root vegetables and sometimes with yuca and cassava root. And to add the color to the cassava, they used to use an oil with these annatto seeds or achiote, and it's from the tree called achiote. It's like a really weird sort of pod with spikes, and they open it up and you see these little seeds, and they have a really amazing red color. So I'm gonna use this. This is very easy to find. This is also what they use to add color to cheddar cheese, actually. So that's a cool thing to know, right? So we're gonna season the stock with the achiote. You can do it with a cheesecloth and make it into a little close into a little bag and put the annatto seeds there. Or you can just add them like that and you can take them out when you're ready to use the stock. Just cut the lemon in little wedges just to serve at the end. So I'm gonna set those aside for the end. We're gonna start with our peppers. I'm gonna cut them in sort of medium-sized squares. I'm gonna put the peppers and the onions together in the same bowl because they're gonna go first together. So, and this I'm gonna just chop it up and add it too. We don't waste anything. And now I'm gonna do the red pepper stripes. You can also use roasted red peppers for the decoration at the end, and they also add a nice smoky flavor. So it's your call. Probably won't use them all. Maybe I'll use half of the pepper, but I am taking advantage and I'm gonna use half for another stir fry I have going on for tomorrow. So I'll save this for later and use this for our paella today. This tomato was very ripe and it's starting to have a little mold. All I'm gonna do is just cut that part off. Let me see. I'll just cut it. Gonna do for the garnish. So for the garlic, I like to mash it first. And now for the onion. If you can leave the onion in the fridge or wash it and put it in the fridge or the freezer while you're prepping the other things, it's better because then you're sort of uh, freeze out, let's call it, the sulfuric acid that is on the root, and that'll make you cry less. So that's a quick tip for you. This honey, this onion has been out since I started prepping this morning, so I'll probably be here crying, but it's okay. I'll do it as quickly as I can. Lastly, we have our eggplant. You don't need to soak the eggplant for this. Some people like to soak it because to avoid for it to get brown, but we're gonna use it rather quickly. I might not use the whole eggplant and I'll probably use half just because this one is really big. So I'm gonna use half of it. I'll use the thicker part and save these for my stir fry later for tomorrow. Putting the onions away is a good idea. So I'm gonna put them close to the cooking area so that my feelings aren't as hurt and I don't cry as much. Alrighty, I'm gonna leave this here. Uh, but this is about it. All the veggies are prepped. Where do we cook a paella? So ideally, you can get a paella pan, and a paella pan is a shallow metal, uh, sort of like dish-like pan. Looks like this, and it comes in various sizes. This one is 12 inches, and it's perfect for to make a paella for 4 servings. And you can get a bigger one. And if you get burns like this and it looks sort of like old and used, that's perfectly fine. That's what you want. Or you can just use a regular saute pan. This one is 8 inches, but for this recipe, we need one that is 12 inches. If it's a smaller one, then you should scale down the recipe. I wouldn't recommend a wok or anything like that because it's too deep. We want something that is sort of kind of shallow because this rice dish is prepared open. We don't cover this. So we need good distribution of heat. And the way to get that is with a shallow pan. So let's get cooking. So we're going to start preparing the broth and we want to add the coloring in the broth and we have 4 cups of vegetable broth. If you eat meat, you can also use chicken broth or any other. If you're making, for example, paella with seafood, broth, a fish broth will be very nice for this. You can either, like I was saying in the beginning, you can wrap this in a cheesecloth or something like that to make it easy to grab. Uh, I'm just gonna just go ahead and add the seeds like that. And because I'm gonna be adding the stock with a ladle, I think I'll be able to catch them and not put them in the food. Not that there's nothing wrong with eating it, but it's just not so pleasant to have the seeds on the rice. So we're gonna let this come to a boil, and as soon as it's boiling, we're gonna turn it down and we're gonna start cooking the paella. And I wanted to speak on something. It's called the socarrat. Socarrat, I think. But in Spanish is with 2 R's, so you say it socarrat. And we also in Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic, socarrat is something like pegao or concon, which is when the rice on the bottom of the pan get cooked and they get golden brown and sticky. And actually, in paella, if you're able to develop socarrat, then you are a master paella maker. But don't worry if you don't get the nice golden sticky rice at the bottom. It's okay. It'll come with time as you make paella over and over and over. So now I'm gonna start to warm up the pan. And if you see the pan is larger than my stove top, so I'm just gonna move it around. Although the heat will distribute as it heats up, but I'm just moving it around. You'll see that the pan will turn brown. That's part of the process. All right, so I'm gonna lower the heat. The broth is almost there. We already see that the annatto seeds are bringing out the reddish color. And I didn't mention in the beginning of the ingredients, we're going to use olive oil. And actually, this is a sort of a moderate fat type of recipe. So it calls for about 3 tablespoons of olive oil. We're going to start with two, and then when we add the rice, we're going to add the other one. We're going to start with the onions and peppers. And we're going to cook them down. I'm going to leave them in the center a little bit to let them brown and to bring out the flavors. And I'm gonna come back to move it around. You already see the broth boiling. We're gonna lower the heat in a little bit. I'm gonna add a little pinch of our salt to start bringing out the juices of the onions and the peppers. So if you see, paella is like building up layers of flavor. It's all about building the flavor. So I'm gonna lower down the heat of the broth. You see it's already turning reddish. I wanted to show you the change in color of the broth. Can you see? It looks a little darker than before. All right, so now we're going to add our tomatoes. We have the paprika. We have about half a teaspoon of paprika, the smoked paprika, and the pepper. You can do it to taste. I put like quarter teaspoon of black pepper. You can use freshly ground black pepper too. We're gonna keep cooking the tomatoes until they cook. They're like a little bit golden brown and they're cooked down a little bit. I'm gonna go in with the eggplant and the rest of the salt. In total, we use about half a teaspoon of salt. We're gonna cook the eggplant down a few more minutes. Few more minutes and we're ready for the rice. I wanted to mention that this is a great barbecue dish. You can put the pan in the barbecue and let it cook in the open fire and you'll have really great paella. When we add the rice, we're gonna mix once to make sure everything is mixed together and adding that extra little bit of oil. And after that, as we start adding the broth, we will stop mixing. Okay? And here we go.
Now we go in with the broth. So I'm gonna turn the heat on the rear and I'm gonna bring the pan close to me. I'm gonna start adding the broth. Now we have the rice simmering, but remember we want to move the pan around. So we're gonna leave it like this for a few more minutes and then we're gonna move the pan around. So as it's cooking, you'll see my hand coming in and out. So that's why. But it's looking really good. I'm excited to try it. I'm gonna lower the heat to sort of medium low. We still want some movement in the pan with the bubbles, but not like it's boiling. I'm gonna add the frozen peas, the peppers, the artichoke hearts, a little bit of the parsley. I'm gonna turn off the heat and I'm gonna cover it with aluminum foil to finish off the cooking. And now we're gonna leave it like this for about 5 to 10 minutes and we'll be right back to enjoy our fabulous paella. Alrighty, so let's see. And I think I have some of the socarrat. The fresh thyme, you can use it either now for garnish or you can cook with the sprigs on top and let the flavor sort of mix up with the rest. Parsley, little lemon. Ooh. All right, everyone, let's see. It's really hot. Personally, I'm not a fan of parsley, so I will do cilantro. So you can use whatever fresh herbs that you enjoy. I really like the fresh thyme. It adds a nice kick to it. So I hope you enjoy it. I'll see you on the next food demo.